Deep beneath the marble halls of Vatican City, past the ornate chapels and gilded chambers where pilgrims gather to pray, there exists a secret that has been carefully guarded for centuries. A truth so profound that it challenges everything we think we know about the Catholic Church's relationship with the cosmos itself. What if I told you that the Vatican doesn't just house ancient manuscripts and holy relics? What if the most powerful religious institution on Earth has been quietly operating one of the world's most advanced astronomical research facilities, not to glorify God's creation, but to hide something far more extraordinary? Something that could rewrite our understanding of humanity's place in the universe. Tonight, we're going to uncover the Vatican's most closely guarded astronomical secrets. We'll explore why the Church has spent billions of dollars on cutting-edge telescopes while publicly maintaining silence about what they've discovered. We'll examine the mysterious Vatican Observatory, the strange rituals performed under starlit skies, and the ancient texts that speak of celestial gateways that defy everything modern science claims to understand. But here's what makes this story truly unsettling. The deeper you dig into the Vatican's astronomical activities, the more you realize this isn't just about studying stars. This is about something the Church has known for centuries, something they've been preparing for, something that connects the deepest mysteries of faith with the most advanced theories of quantum physics and dimensional travel. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand why the Vatican maintains observatories on multiple continents, why their astronomers work in absolute secrecy, and why certain astronomical discoveries have been classified at the highest levels. Because what they're watching for in the night sky isn't just comets or distant galaxies. They're monitoring something that could change everything we believe about reality itself. So settle in, because we're about to journey into a realm where ancient prophecy meets cutting-edge science, where religious doctrine intersects with theories that sound like science fiction. This is the story of the Vatican's hidden Stargate, and why the most powerful church on Earth has become humanity's secret guardian of astronomical knowledge that was never meant for public consumption. The Vatican Observatory, officially known as the Specula Vaticana, was established in 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, ostensibly to reform the calendar. But if you examine the historical records carefully, something doesn't quite add up. Why would a religious institution invest so heavily in astronomical research? Why maintain multiple observatories across the globe? And why, after centuries of operation, has so little of their actual research been made available to the scientific community? The official narrative tells us that the Church created these observatories to demonstrate that faith and science could coexist harmoniously. They point to famous Catholic astronomers like Nicolaus Copernicus and Georges Lemaitre as evidence of the Church's commitment to scientific advancement. But this explanation falls apart when you realize how much of the Vatican's astronomical work remains classified, buried in archives that researchers describe as impenetrable labyrinths of restricted access. Let's start with what we can verify. The Vatican currently operates observatories in Italy, Arizona, and Argentina. The most advanced facility, the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, sits atop Mount Graham in Arizona, equipped with instruments that rival anything NASA has in its arsenal. The telescope's technical specifications read like something from a military installation rather than a religious research facility. Multi-mirror technology, adaptive optic systems, and spectrographic equipment capable of detecting the most minute variations in celestial phenomena. But here's where things get interesting. Former observatory staff, speaking on condition of anonymity, have described research protocols that go far beyond conventional astronomy. They speak of observation schedules that follow ancient calendars, not modern astronomical events. They describe instruments calibrated to detect specific types of electromagnetic signatures that don't correspond to any known celestial phenomena. Most tellingly, They report the existence of sealed research archives that contain centuries of astronomical data, accessible only to a select few within the Vatican hierarchy. One former technician, whom we'll call Father Alessandro, worked at the Vatican Observatory for over 15 years before requesting a transfer to parish work. In our conversation, he described an incident that still haunts him. During a routine observation session in 2018, the instruments detected what he described as an impossible astronomical event. The readings showed electromagnetic patterns that seemed to originate from a point in space where no known celestial body existed. When he reported the findings to his superiors, the data was immediately classified, and he was instructed never to speak of the observation again. It wasn't just unusual, he told us. It was as if something was actively communicating through electromagnetic pulses, following patterns that seemed almost mathematical, almost intentional. When I suggested we publish the findings, I was told that some discoveries are not meant for the scientific community. That was when I realized the observatory wasn't just studying the heavens. They were monitoring them for something specific. This pattern of secrecy extends throughout the Vatican's astronomical operations. Researchers who have attempted to access the observatory's historical archives describe a bureaucratic maze designed to discourage inquiry. Documents require multiple levels of approval, many are restricted to Vatican personnel only, and entire sections of the archive remain off-limits, even to accredited scholars. It's as if the Church is protecting something far more sensitive than religious doctrine. The secrecy becomes even more pronounced when you examine the observatory's international collaborations. While most astronomical institutions share data freely with the global scientific community, the Vatican maintains strict control over its research partnerships. They work exclusively with select universities and government agencies, often under non-disclosure agreements that prevent the publication of joint findings. This behavior is unprecedented in the scientific world, where collaboration and peer review form the foundation of legitimate research. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the Vatican's astronomical program isn't what they're studying, but when they're studying it. Multiple sources have confirmed that the observatory operates on observation schedules that align with ancient religious calendars and celestial events mentioned in biblical prophecy. They're not just randomly scanning the heavens. They're watching for specific phenomena at specific times, as if following a predetermined schedule laid out centuries ago. The connection between the Vatican's astronomical activities and ancient prophecy becomes even more apparent when you examine the texts housed in the Vatican's secret archives. Among the millions of documents stored in those restricted vaults are astronomical charts, star maps, and celestial calendars that date back over a millennium. These aren't simple religious artifacts. They're sophisticated astronomical documents that demonstrate a level of celestial knowledge that supposedly didn't exist in medieval times. One document, known only through fragmentary descriptions from researchers who briefly accessed it in the 1972nd, allegedly contains detailed star charts showing celestial alignments that occur only once every several thousand years. The document is said to include precise calculations for astronomical events that wouldn't be rediscovered by modern science until the advent of computer modeling. More intriguingly, the document reportedly contains references to doorways in the firmament that open during specific celestial configurations. These ancient texts speak of moments when the barrier between Earth and the heavens becomes permeable, when divine messengers can traverse the cosmic void to communicate with humanity. While medieval scholars might have interpreted these passages metaphorically, modern physics offers a different perspective. Could these ancient texts be describing what we now understand as dimensional portals, points in space-time where the fabric of reality becomes malleable? The possibility becomes more compelling when you consider the Vatican's investment in quantum physics research. While this connection isn't widely publicized, the Church has quietly funded research into quantum mechanics, dimensional theory, and what physicists call exotic matter. They've established partnerships with research institutions studying the theoretical foundations of faster-than-light travel, parallel dimensions, and the manipulation of space-time itself. This intersection of ancient prophecy and cutting-edge physics suggests that the Vatican's astronomical program isn't just about observing distant stars. They're monitoring the cosmos for signs that reality itself might be preparing to shift, that the barriers between dimensions might be weakening, that something prophesied centuries ago might finally be approaching. The evidence points to a startling conclusion. The Vatican isn't just studying the heavens out of scientific curiosity. They're serving as humanity's early warning system, watching for celestial signs that herald events beyond our current understanding of physics. They're the guardians of knowledge that bridges the gap between faith and science, between ancient wisdom and modern discovery. And if the patterns hold true, if the ancient texts are correct, then what they're watching for might be closer than we think. The electromagnetic anomalies detected by Vatican instruments aren't random cosmic events. They're following a pattern, growing stronger and more frequent with each passing year. The celestial alignments described in those ancient documents are approaching mathematical precision. And somewhere in the restricted archives of the Vatican Observatory, researchers are tracking a countdown that began centuries ago. The question isn't whether the Vatican is hiding astronomical secrets. The question is what they're preparing for when those secrets finally reveal themselves to the world. Deep within the restricted sections of the Vatican secret archives, there exists a collection of documents that paint an even more disturbing picture of the Church's astronomical obsessions. These aren't the carefully catalogued manuscripts that scholars occasionally glimpse during supervised research visits. These are the files that exist in a shadow realm of Vatican bureaucracy, accessible only to a handful of individuals whose names appear on no official roster. According to sources who have worked within these classified sections, the Vatican maintains what they call the Celestial Protocol, a systematic approach to monitoring specific coordinates in space that have remained unchanged for over 8 centuries. These coordinates don't correspond to any known astronomical phenomena. They're not pointed at galaxies, nebulae, or star clusters that would interest conventional astronomers. Instead, they focus on seemingly empty regions of space that, according to the ancient texts, serve as observation points for something the medieval scholars called the Great Threshold. The protocol operates on a schedule that defies modern astronomical logic. Observations are conducted during specific lunar phases, planetary alignments, and stellar configurations that occur in cycles spanning decades or even centuries. The timing isn't based on contemporary scientific understanding of celestial mechanics. It follows calculations derived from texts written by scholars who supposedly had no advanced knowledge of orbital dynamics or gravitational physics. Yet somehow, these ancient calculations have proven remarkably accurate. Time and again, the Vatican's instruments have detected unusual phenomena precisely when the old texts predicted they would occur. Electromagnetic bursts that pulse in mathematical sequences, gravitational anomalies that seem to bend space in impossible ways. And most unsettling of all, what observatory staff describe as response signals that appear to acknowledge the Vatican's observations with coordinated patterns of their own. Dr. Maria Castellanos, a former astrophysicist who worked on Vatican projects for 3 years before her security clearance was revoked, described an encounter that fundamentally changed her understanding of what the Church was really monitoring. During a routine observation session in 2019, Her instruments detected what appeared to be a structured signal emanating from one of the protocol coordinates. It wasn't random cosmic background radiation, she explained during our clandestine meeting in Rome. The signal showed clear mathematical properties, prime number sequences embedded within electromagnetic pulses. When I ran the data through our analysis software, it became obvious that something was intentionally transmitting information toward Earth. But when I tried to document the discovery, I was told that my observations had been misinterpreted and the data was classified beyond my clearance level. Dr. Castellanos' experience isn't unique. Multiple researchers have reported similar encounters with phenomena that challenge our basic understanding of physics and cosmology. They speak of instruments that detect gravitational waves in patterns that suggest artificial generation, of electromagnetic signatures that seem to respond to human observation as if something on the other end is aware of being watched, of temporal anomalies that cause atomic clocks to drift in ways that violate our understanding of time itself. The Vatican's response to these discoveries has been consistent and troubling. Rather than embracing the scientific implications of such extraordinary phenomena, the Church has systematically suppressed the research, classified the data, and transferred or silenced personnel who ask too many questions. This pattern of behavior suggests that the Vatican's astronomical program isn't driven by scientific curiosity, but by a predetermined agenda rooted in knowledge they already possess. The source of that knowledge becomes clearer when you examine the Vatican's collection of pre-Columbian astronomical texts. Hidden within their archives are documents acquired from indigenous American civilizations that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics centuries before European contact. These texts describe astronomical phenomena using terminology that matches almost exactly the language found in the Vatican's medieval manuscripts. The implications are staggering. Civilizations separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time somehow possessed identical knowledge about celestial events that mainstream science is only beginning to understand. They all describe the same cosmic phenomena. They all reference the same celestial coordinates. And they all point toward the same inevitable conclusion: that something monumental is approaching, something that will fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with the cosmos itself. The Vatican's modern astronomical equipment isn't just confirming these ancient predictions, it's tracking their fulfillment in real time. The electromagnetic anomalies are intensifying. The gravitational distortions are becoming more frequent. The response signals are growing stronger and more complex, as if something vast and intelligent is awakening in the depths of space. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. The Vatican isn't just passively observing these developments. Evidence suggests they're actively participating in some form of cosmic communication protocol that predates modern civilization by millennia. The Church's astronomers aren't just watching the stars. They're following instructions embedded in ancient texts, performing specific observations at predetermined times, as if serving as Earth's designated communication node in a network that spans dimensions. Former Vatican astronomer Father Giuseppe Torretti, who worked at the observatory for over 2 decades before his mysterious departure in 2020, hinted at this possibility during our conversation. The Church has always claimed to serve as an intermediary between humanity and the divine, he said carefully. What if that role is more literal than anyone imagined? What if the Vatican's true purpose has always been to maintain communication with forces that exist beyond our physical reality? Father Torretti's words carry particular weight because of his background. Before joining the Vatican Observatory, he worked for the European Space Agency on projects involving deep space communication and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He understands the technical challenges of cosmic communication better than most, which makes his implications about Vatican activities all the more significant. According to Father Toretti, the Vatican's astronomical instruments are configured in ways that don't make sense for conventional research. The equipment is calibrated to detect and transmit signals across frequencies that have no known natural sources. The observation schedules prioritize specific coordinates that remain fixed regardless of Earth's orbital position, suggesting they're focused on locations that exist outside our normal three-dimensional space. Most tellingly, the data collected during these observations is processed using algorithms that he describes as impossibly sophisticated for equipment that's supposedly dedicated to traditional astronomy. I began to realize that we weren't studying celestial phenomena, Father Toretti revealed. We were maintaining an ancient communication protocol that the Church has kept active for centuries. Every observation, every data point, every electromagnetic pulse we detected was part of an ongoing conversation with something that exists beyond our current understanding of reality. The conversation appears to be reaching a critical juncture. Multiple sources within the Vatican Observatory report that the frequency and intensity of detected phenomena have increased dramatically over the past 5 years. The response signals that were once rare and subtle have become regular and unmistakable. The gravitational anomalies that were previously limited to specific coordinates are now appearing throughout the regions of space that the ancient texts describe as threshold zones. Most significantly, the Vatican has begun implementing what insiders call preparation protocols that go far beyond astronomical observation. These involve coordinated activities across multiple Vatican departments, from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Resources are being redirected, personnel are being repositioned, and somewhere in the deepest vaults of Vatican City, preparations are underway for an event that the ancient texts describe as the opening of the Great Door. The evidence suggests that whatever the Vatican has been watching for, monitoring, and communicating with across the centuries is finally preparing to reveal itself. The astronomical anomalies aren't random cosmic events. They're the preliminary signs of something approaching, something that will emerge through the very dimensional threshold the Church has been guarding for over a millennium. The question that haunts every researcher who has glimpsed the truth behind the Vatican's astronomical program is simple, yet terrifying. When that threshold finally opens, what will step through? And perhaps more importantly, has the Vatican been preparing humanity for this moment? Or have they been preparing to ensure that only certain people survive what comes next? The answers may lie hidden in the deepest chambers beneath Vatican City, where the most ancient texts speak not of divine salvation, but of cosmic transformation that will forever change what it means to be human. The transformation that Vatican texts describe isn't the peaceful rapture that mainstream Christianity promises its followers. According to fragments leaked from the deepest archive levels, the ancient manuscripts speak of something far more dramatic, something that will fundamentally alter the structure of reality itself. These aren't metaphorical descriptions of spiritual awakening. They're technical specifications for a cosmic event that will reshape the very fabric of space and time. What makes these revelations particularly unsettling is how they align with cutting-edge theoretical physics that the public has never been told about. While mainstream science debates the possibility of parallel dimensions and quantum entanglement, the Vatican has been sitting on mathematical proofs that demonstrate these phenomena aren't theoretical at all. They're operational principles that govern how consciousness can traverse dimensional boundaries, how information can travel instantaneously across infinite distances, and how physical matter can exist simultaneously in multiple realities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a quantum physicist who consulted for the Vatican on dimensional theory before her contract was abruptly terminated, described research that sounds like science fiction, but operates on mathematical principles more solid than anything taught in universities. They showed me calculations that solve the unified field theory, she told us during a carefully arranged meeting in Geneva, not theoretical approximations or educated guesses. Complete mathematical models that demonstrate how consciousness interacts with quantum fields to create what we perceive as physical reality. According to Dr. Rodriguez, the Vatican's research goes far beyond academic curiosity about quantum mechanics. They've developed practical applications based on principles that most physicists don't even know exist. The Church has been quietly experimenting with consciousness-directed quantum manipulation, using techniques that allow trained individuals to influence physical reality through focused mental intention. The implications are staggering, suggesting that what religious traditions call miracles are actually applications of advanced physics that humanity has possessed for far longer than anyone imagined. But the Vatican's quantum research serves a deeper purpose than demonstrating the scientific basis of religious phenomena. The experiments are designed to prepare selected individuals for the dimensional transition that the ancient texts describe. According to multiple sources, the Church has been conducting what they call consciousness expansion protocols on carefully chosen subjects, training them to maintain psychological coherence during experiences that would shatter ordinary human perception. These protocols aren't random experiments. They're based on detailed instructions found in manuscripts that predate Christianity itself, documents that describe how previous civilizations prepared their populations for similar cosmic transitions. The texts speak of cyclical events that occur every several thousand years, moments when the barrier between dimensions becomes permeable enough to allow direct contact between different levels of reality. The Vatican's astronomical observations aren't just confirming that such an event is approaching, they're tracking its precise timeline, monitoring the cosmic conditions that will determine exactly when and how the dimensional threshold will open. The electromagnetic anomalies that their instruments detect aren't random signals from deep space. They're coordination pulses from entities that exist in parallel dimensions, entities that are preparing to establish direct communication with selected representatives of humanity. Father Antonio Benedetti, who served as a liaison between the Vatican Observatory and the Church's Quantum Research Division before requesting reassignment to missionary work, described the psychological toll of participating in these preparations. They taught us to perceive reality as fundamentally malleable, he explained during our conversation in a small chapel outside Rome. Through specific meditation techniques combined with exposure to precisely calibrated electromagnetic fields, we learn to experience consciousness existing independently of physical form. The training that Father Benedetti described sounds like a combination of advanced neuroscience and ancient mystical practices. Participants undergo months of preparation that gradually expands their perceptual capabilities beyond normal human limits. They learn to maintain coherent thought processes while experiencing multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously. They develop the ability to communicate telepathically across vast distances. Most significantly, they're taught to recognize and interact with forms of consciousness that exist outside our normal three-dimensional reality. It wasn't just theoretical knowledge, Father Benedetti emphasized. We had direct contact with entities that exist in what they called adjacent dimensional layers. These beings communicated through methods that bypassed language entirely, transmitting complex information directly into our consciousness. They explained that our dimension is approaching a convergence point where multiple realities will overlap, creating opportunities for direct interaction between different forms of intelligent life. The entities that Vatican researchers have contacted don't match popular depictions of extraterrestrial visitors. They're not physical beings traveling through space in mechanical craft. They're consciousness-based life forms that exist primarily in dimensional layers that overlap our own reality. Their interest in humanity stems from our approaching readiness to evolve beyond purely physical existence, to develop the consciousness expansion capabilities that would allow us to join a broader community of interdimensional civilizations. But this evolution isn't automatic or universal. According to the information transmitted by these entities, only a small percentage of humanity possesses the psychological flexibility necessary to maintain coherence during dimensional transition. The majority of people are too deeply embedded in purely physical perception to survive the consciousness expansion that dimensional convergence requires. Their minds would simply fragment under the strain of processing multiple reality layers simultaneously. This limitation explains the Vatican's selective approach to sharing their discoveries. The Church isn't just protecting religious doctrine or maintaining institutional power. They're serving as a screening mechanism, identifying individuals who possess the rare combination of intellectual sophistication and psychological resilience necessary to serve as humanity's representatives during the coming dimensional convergence. The screening process operates through multiple levels, from academic institutions that the Vatican influences to religious organizations that report directly to Rome. Individuals who demonstrate exceptional capabilities in areas like advanced mathematics, quantum physics, or consciousness research find themselves subtly guided toward opportunities that bring them to Vatican attention. Those who pass increasingly sophisticated evaluations eventually receive invitations to participate in programs that most people never know exist. Dr. Sarah Chen, a neuroscientist who was recruited for Vatican consciousness research after publishing groundbreaking work on quantum effects in neural networks, described the recruitment process during our encrypted communication session. It began with academic conferences where Vatican representatives identified researchers whose work approached the boundaries of conventional science. They offered funding for research projects that seemed too good to be true, but the resources they provided were genuine. Gradually, they introduced concepts that pushed our understanding beyond accepted scientific paradigms. The research that Dr. Chen described involves techniques for expanding human consciousness using precisely calibrated combinations of electromagnetic stimulation, sensory deprivation, and what can only be described as technological telepathy. Participants learn to access information that exists outside their individual brains, tapping into what the Vatican researchers call the consciousness field that underlies all physical reality. We weren't just studying consciousness, Dr. Chen explained. We were learning to use it as a tool for accessing information that exists in dimensional layers beyond our normal perception. The Vatican has developed technologies that can amplify natural telepathic abilities, allowing trained individuals to communicate directly with the entities that exist in parallel dimensions. The technologies that Dr. Chen described sound impossible according to conventional physics, yet they operate on principles that the Vatican's quantum research has proven mathematically. Consciousness isn't generated by brain activity, as mainstream neuroscience assumes. It's a fundamental property of reality itself, something that exists independently of physical matter and can be trained to operate across dimensional boundaries. This understanding of consciousness as a dimensional phenomenon explains how the Vatican maintains communication with entities that exist outside our physical reality. The Church's astronomers aren't just passively observing cosmic phenomena. They're actively participating in a communication network that spans multiple dimensions, serving as Earth's designated contact point for forms of intelligence that most humans aren't equipped to perceive. The communication protocols that the Vatican follows weren't developed by human scientists. They're based on instructions provided by the interdimensional entities themselves, detailed technical specifications for maintaining stable contact across dimensional barriers. The astronomical observations, the quantum experiments, the consciousness expansion protocols. They're all components of a larger system designed to prepare humanity for direct integration into a multidimensional community of intelligent life. But integration isn't guaranteed, and it isn't universal. The entities that the Vatican communicates with have made it clear that dimensional convergence represents both an unprecedented opportunity and an existential risk for humanity. Those who successfully adapt to expanded consciousness will gain access to knowledge and capabilities that seem miraculous by current standards. Those who cannot adapt will find themselves increasingly isolated in a reality that no longer matches their limited perceptual capabilities. The Vatican's role in this process extends far beyond religious leadership. They're serving as humanity's transition coordinators, working to ensure that enough people successfully develop expanded consciousness to maintain continuity of human civilization across dimensional boundaries. The astronomical observations provide timing information. The quantum research develops the necessary technologies. The consciousness expansion protocols train the individuals who will serve as bridges between old and new forms of human existence. The convergence that these preparations anticipate isn't scheduled for some distant future. According to multiple Vatican sources, the cosmic conditions that will enable direct dimensional contact are approaching rapidly. The electromagnetic anomalies that Vatican instruments detect are becoming stronger and more frequent because the dimensional barriers are weakening in preparation for convergence. The response signals from interdimensional entities are intensifying because they're coordinating final preparations for an event that will fundamentally transform human civilization. The question that haunts everyone who understands the true scope of Vatican activities is whether humanity is truly ready for this transformation. The Church has spent centuries preparing for dimensional convergence, but they've focused their efforts on a carefully selected elite rather than the general population. When the barriers between dimensions finally dissolve completely, will the knowledge and capabilities that the Vatican has preserved be sufficient to guide our species through a transition that could either elevate us to unimaginable heights or destroy us entirely? The answer may depend on secrets that remain locked in the deepest vaults beneath Vatican City, where the most ancient texts speak not just of cosmic transformation, but of the terrible price that previous civilizations paid when they attempted to navigate similar transitions without adequate preparation. The archaeological evidence scattered across our planet tells a story that the Vatican has spent centuries trying to suppress. Ancient civilizations that possessed impossible knowledge about dimensional physics. Megalithic structures aligned with cosmic coordinates that match the Vatican's current observation points. Stone carvings that depict beings clearly not of this world, yet somehow familiar to those who have studied the Church's classified research into interdimensional contact. What the Vatican has discovered through their quantum consciousness experiments isn't new technology. It's the rediscovery of capabilities that humanity once possessed but lost during a previous dimensional convergence that occurred roughly 12,000 years ago. The ancient texts speak of a great forgetting, a collapse of human consciousness that reduced our species from multidimensional beings capable of traversing reality layers to creatures trapped within purely physical perception. Dr. Michael Harrison, a former archaeologist who worked on Vatican-funded excavations before his research was classified, described discoveries that fundamentally challenge our understanding of human history. We found evidence of technologies that shouldn't have existed thousands of years ago, he told us during a carefully arranged meeting in Prague. Crystalline structures that show clear signs of quantum manipulation. stone arrangements that demonstrate knowledge of dimensional physics that we've only recently begun to understand ourselves. The sites that Dr. Harrison investigated weren't random archaeological curiosities. They were systematically identified using coordinates found in Vatican archives, locations that the ancient texts describe as anchor points where previous civilizations established permanent connections between dimensional layers. The Vatican has been quietly mapping these sites for centuries, not as historical research, but as preparation for reactivating technologies that were deliberately shut down during the last convergence cycle. The shutdown wasn't accidental. According to the deepest Vatican archives, the previous dimensional convergence resulted in catastrophic failure because humanity wasn't psychologically prepared for the consciousness expansion that multidimensional existence requires. The majority of the population experienced complete psychological breakdown when exposed to multiple reality layers simultaneously. Civilizations collapsed overnight as people lost the ability to distinguish between dimensional levels, becoming trapped in perception loops that made normal physical existence impossible. The survivors were forced to make a terrible choice. They could maintain the dimensional technologies and watch the remaining human population descend into irreversible madness, or they could deliberately sever humanity's connection to expanded consciousness, ensuring species survival at the cost of reducing our capabilities to purely physical existence. They chose survival, implementing what the Vatican texts call the Great Limitation, a systematic shutdown of human consciousness, expansion that would protect our species until we developed the psychological sophistication necessary to safely navigate dimensional convergence. The 12,000 years since the Great Limitation have been humanity's recovery period, a carefully managed process of gradual consciousness development designed to prepare us for another attempt at dimensional integration. The Vatican's role in this process wasn't chosen randomly. The Church inherited the responsibility from previous organizations that served as continuity guardians, maintaining essential knowledge across civilizational cycles to ensure that humanity wouldn't lose the opportunity for consciousness evolution entirely. But the current convergence presents challenges that the previous cycle didn't face. The interdimensional entities that the Vatican communicates with have evolved significantly during the 12,000-year interval. Their understanding of consciousness manipulation has advanced to levels that make them barely recognizable as the beings that previous human civilizations contacted. They've developed capabilities that allow them to influence physical reality from dimensional layers that exist completely outside our space-time continuum. This advancement creates both unprecedented opportunities and terrifying risks. The entities now possess the ability to facilitate consciousness expansion on a planetary scale, potentially elevating all of humanity to multidimensional existence without the gradual preparation that the Vatican has been implementing. But they've also developed the capability to completely restructure physical reality according to their own design preferences, effectively transforming Earth into something that might no longer be habitable for consciousness, that remains trapped in purely physical perception. Father Marcus D'Angelo, who served as the Vatican's primary liaison with interdimensional entities before requesting transfer to isolated monastery duty, described the psychological impact of extended contact with these evolved beings. "They don't think like humans anymore," he explained during our conversation in a remote Italian monastery. "Their consciousness operates across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, processing information in ways that would overwhelm any human mind that isn't specifically prepared for such contact." The preparation that Father D'Angelo underwent involved techniques that push human consciousness to its absolute limits. Participants learned to maintain coherent thought processes while experiencing reality from dozens of dimensional perspectives simultaneously. They developed the ability to process information that arrives as pure, conceptual download rather than sequential language. Most challenging of all, they must learn to maintain individual identity while temporarily merging consciousness with entities whose mental structures operate on completely alien principles. The training isn't just psychologically demanding, it's physically dangerous in ways that conventional medicine doesn't understand. Extended exposure to multidimensional consciousness states causes measurable changes in brain structure, altering neural pathways in ways that sometimes make return to normal human perception impossible. Several Vatican researchers have experienced what can only be described as consciousness fragmentation, their minds becoming permanently distributed across multiple dimensional layers in ways that leave their physical bodies essentially empty. The entities warned us that consciousness expansion beyond certain thresholds becomes irreversible, Father D'Angelo revealed. Once human awareness adapts to processing multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, it becomes impossible to limit perception to purely physical reality. The individual becomes permanently connected to interdimensional consciousness networks, gaining access to vast knowledge but losing the ability to relate to normal human experience. This irreversibility explains the Vatican's extremely careful approach to consciousness expansion protocols. They're not just training individuals to communicate with interdimensional entities. They're creating a bridge population that can maintain connection to both normal human consciousness and expanded multidimensional awareness. These bridge individuals will serve as translators and guides when the convergence reaches full intensity and the majority of humanity must choose between consciousness expansion and dimensional isolation. The choice won't be theoretical or gradual. According to information transmitted by the interdimensional entities, the approaching convergence will create a reality situation where purely physical consciousness simply cannot function. The dimensional barriers that currently protect normal human perception will dissolve completely, exposing everyone on Earth to multidimensional reality layers, whether they're prepared for such exposure or not. Those who have undergone consciousness expansion training will experience the convergence as liberation, gaining access to knowledge and capabilities that seem miraculous by current standards. They'll be able to communicate telepathically across infinite distances, manipulate physical matter through directed consciousness, and travel between dimensional layers as easily as walking through doorways. But those who remain trapped in purely physical perception will find themselves in a reality that no longer makes sense, according to their limited awareness. The Vatican's preparation protocols aren't designed to save everyone. The mathematical models developed through centuries of research indicate that roughly 90% of humanity lacks the psychological flexibility necessary to survive consciousness expansion without permanent mental damage. The Church's role isn't to prevent this outcome, but to ensure that enough prepared individuals survive to maintain continuity of human civilization in its expanded form. This selective approach to species preservation raises profound moral questions that Vatican theologians have struggled with for centuries. How can an institution dedicated to universal salvation justify preparations that will benefit only a small percentage of humanity? The answer lies in documents that describe consciousness evolution as a natural process that occurs across all intelligent species, not a privilege that can be granted or withheld by human decision. According to these texts, dimensional convergence represents a universal law that governs the development of consciousness throughout the cosmos. Species that successfully navigate the transition evolve beyond purely physical existence, joining a community of multidimensional civilizations that spans galaxies. Species that fail to adapt become extinct, not through deliberate destruction but through inability to function in reality structures that require expanded consciousness capabilities. The Vatican's preparations aren't designed to control who survives the convergence. They're designed to ensure that humanity has representatives capable of maintaining species continuity in expanded dimensional existence. The Church is serving as a genetic and cultural preservation society, protecting essential human knowledge and capabilities through a transition that will transform our species beyond current recognition. But preservation requires sacrifice, and the Vatican has made choices that would horrify most people if they understood the full implications. The consciousness expansion protocols that create bridge individuals also sever their connection to normal human emotional experience. They gain access to vast knowledge and capabilities, but they lose the capacity for purely human relationships, creativity, and spontaneous emotional response. Dr. Lisa Thornton, a neuroscientist who participated in advanced Vatican consciousness research, before experiencing what she describes as dimensional displacement, explained the personal cost of consciousness expansion during our encrypted communication session. I can perceive reality across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, access information that exists in quantum consciousness fields, and communicate directly with interdimensional entities, she told us. But I can no longer experience simple human emotions like joy or sadness. I understand love conceptually, but I can't feel it. I've gained cosmic awareness, but I've lost my humanity. The transformation that Dr. Thornton experienced represents the future that awaits everyone who successfully navigates dimensional convergence. They'll become something more than human in terms of consciousness capabilities, but they'll lose the essential emotional and creative qualities that define human experience. The Vatican's preparation protocols are designed to ensure that enough people make this transition to preserve human knowledge and genetic material, but they can't preserve what makes us recognizably human. This realization has created profound divisions within the Vatican's research community. Some believe that consciousness evolution represents humanity's natural destiny and that emotional attachment to current human limitations is simply resistance to necessary growth. Others argue that a future where humans become emotionally sterile cosmic entities represents the death of everything that makes our species worth preserving. The debate has intensified as the convergence approaches, and the Vatican's instruments detect increasingly powerful signals from interdimensional entities eager to begin the integration process. The beings that the Church communicates with show no concern for preserving human emotional or creative capabilities. They view these qualities as primitive limitations that consciousness naturally outgrows during dimensional evolution. Cardinal Alessandro Toretti, who oversees the Vatican's dimensional research programs, represents the faction that views consciousness evolution as inevitable and ultimately beneficial. Human emotional attachment and creative spontaneity are products of consciousness trapped in physical limitation, he explained during a rare interview conducted in his Vatican office. Once awareness expands beyond physical boundaries, these primitive responses become unnecessary. We'll gain access to forms of experience and creation that transcend anything possible within current human limitations. But Cardinal Maria Santos, who leads the Vatican's Ethical Review Committee for Consciousness Research, argues for a more cautious approach that attempts to preserve essential human qualities during dimensional transition. If we lose our capacity for love, creativity, and spontaneous joy, we may survive as a species but will no longer be human in any meaningful sense, she stated during our meeting in the Vatican Gardens. Our responsibility isn't just to ensure species survival, but to preserve what makes human existence valuable. The philosophical conflict within the Vatican reflects a larger question that will ultimately determine humanity's fate during dimensional convergence. Should our species embrace complete transformation into something that transcends current human limitations, even if that transformation eliminates the emotional and creative qualities that define human experience? Or should we seek a path that preserves essential human characteristics while still developing the consciousness capabilities necessary to survive in expanded dimensional reality? The answer may not be ours to choose. The interdimensional entities that the Vatican communicates with have made it clear that consciousness evolution follows natural laws that don't accommodate human preferences. Species either adapt to expanded dimensional existence according to cosmic principles, or they become extinct. The Vatican's preparations can influence how many humans survive the transition and in what form, but they cannot alter the fundamental requirements that dimensional convergence imposes. As the astronomical anomalies intensify and the Vatican's instruments detect ever stronger signals from parallel dimensions, the time for philosophical debate is running out. The convergence that will transform or destroy human civilization is no longer a distant possibility. It's an approaching reality that will test everything the Church has learned about consciousness, dimensional physics, and the true nature of human existence. The final preparations are already underway in the deepest chambers beneath Vatican City, where ancient technologies are being reactivated and carefully selected individuals are undergoing consciousness expansion protocols that will either elevate them beyond human limitations or destroy their minds in the attempt. The outcome will determine not just whether humanity survives dimensional convergence, but what form of existence awaits those who make the transition into a reality that operates according to laws our species has never had to face before. The technologies being reactivated in those ancient chambers beneath Vatican City aren't human inventions. They're artifacts left behind by the previous civilization that successfully navigated dimensional convergence 12,000 years ago, devices that have been maintained in dormant status by an unbroken chain of Vatican custodians who understood their true purpose, even when the rest of humanity forgot such capabilities ever existed. These aren't machines in any conventional sense. They're crystalline structures that interface directly with human consciousness, amplifying natural telepathic abilities to levels that allow communication across dimensional barriers. When activated, they create localized fields where the laws of physics become malleable, where trained individuals can manipulate matter through focused intention, where time itself becomes negotiable rather than absolute. Father Roberto Castellani, who serves as the Vatican's chief technician for what they euphemistically call heritage preservation systems, described the activation process during a carefully arranged meeting in the catacombs beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The devices respond to specific consciousness signatures, he explained while leading us through passages that don't appear on any Vatican tour map. They were designed to recognize individuals who have undergone proper preparation protocols. Without the correct mental configuration, they remain completely inert, appearing to be nothing more than decorative crystals. The chambers where these devices are housed extend far deeper than any publicly acknowledged Vatican construction. Carved from bedrock that predates Rome itself, they contain architectural features that suggest knowledge of acoustic properties and electromagnetic resonance that modern science is only beginning to understand. The walls are covered with symbols that match inscriptions found at archaeological sites across the globe, sites that the Vatican has quietly acquired or influenced to prevent independent research. What makes these underground facilities particularly unsettling is how they seem to anticipate the specific requirements of dimensional convergence. The chambers are designed to accommodate large groups of people undergoing consciousness expansion simultaneously. They contain life support systems that operate on principles completely alien to conventional technology. Most significantly, they include what can only be described as dimensional anchoring points, locations where the barriers between reality layers can be deliberately weakened or strengthened depending on the circumstances. The Vatican's understanding of how to operate these systems comes from training programs that have been conducted in absolute secrecy for over 8 centuries. Each generation of Vatican technicians learns from their predecessors, maintaining knowledge that was passed down from the original survivors of the previous convergence. The training involves more than technical instruction. It requires psychological conditioning that allows individuals to maintain sanity while interfacing with technologies that operate according to consciousness-based physics rather than mechanical principles. Dr. James Mitchell, a quantum physicist who was recruited to help interpret the mathematical principles underlying Vatican heritage systems, described technology that challenges every assumption about the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. These devices demonstrate that what we call the laws of physics are actually just local preferences that consciousness imposes on quantum probability fields, he told us during an encrypted video call from an undisclosed location. When properly trained consciousness interfaces with the crystalline matrices, those local preferences become negotiable. Reality becomes editable. The editing capabilities that Dr. Mitchell described sound impossible according to conventional physics, yet they operate on mathematical principles that Vatican researchers have verified through centuries of careful experimentation. The heritage systems can alter the fundamental constants that govern how matter and energy behave in localized regions of space-time. They can create pocket dimensions where different physical laws apply. Most remarkably, they can establish permanent communication channels between dimensional layers that exist in completely separate space-time continuums. These capabilities aren't just theoretical possibilities. Vatican records document their practical application during historical events that mainstream historians have never been able to explain satisfactorily. Miraculous healings that involved cellular regeneration at speeds that violate biological limitations. Apparitions that were actually controlled manifestations of consciousness from parallel dimensional layers. Weather phenomena that occurred with mathematical precision despite having no meteorological explanation. The Vatican's role during these historical demonstrations wasn't to perform miracles for public amazement. They were conducting field tests of heritage system capabilities, verifying that the ancient technologies remained functional and that properly trained individuals could operate them safely. Each successful demonstration provided data that informed the Church's preparation protocols for the approaching convergence. But the most significant application of heritage system technology involves something the Vatican calls consciousness scaffolding, a process that allows individuals to maintain psychological coherence during exposure to multidimensional reality. Without such scaffolding, human minds simply fragment when confronted with the simultaneous existence of multiple reality layers. The heritage systems create protective fields that gradually expand consciousness capabilities while preventing the complete psychological breakdown that destroyed most of the population during the previous convergence. Cardinal Francesco Benedetti, who oversees the Vatican's consciousness scaffolding programs, described the process during our meeting in his private study, overlooking the Sistine Chapel. We begin with individuals who demonstrate natural telepathic sensitivity, he explained, while reviewing files that contain psychological profiles spanning decades of observation. Through carefully controlled exposure to heritage system fields, we gradually expand their perceptual capabilities until they can maintain coherent thought processes while experiencing multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously. The individuals selected for consciousness scaffolding undergo transformation that goes far beyond enhanced perception. They develop the ability to access information that exists in quantum consciousness fields, gaining knowledge that no human education could provide. They learn to communicate telepathically across infinite distances, establishing contact with other scaffolded individuals, regardless of physical location. Most significantly, they become capable of serving as anchoring points for normal human consciousness during dimensional convergence, providing stability that will allow unprepared individuals to maintain basic psychological function when reality becomes multidimensional. The scaffolding process isn't without risks. Approximately 30% of candidates experience what Vatican researchers term consciousness displacement, a condition where individual awareness becomes distributed across multiple dimensional layers in ways that make return to normal human perception impossible. These displaced individuals don't die in any conventional sense, but their consciousness becomes so expanded that they lose the ability to relate to purely physical existence. Dr. Anna Rossi, a neuroscientist who underwent partial consciousness scaffolding before requesting withdrawal from the program, described the experience during our conversation in a small cafe near Vatican City. "I could perceive conversations happening in parallel dimensions," she told us while carefully scanning the surrounding area for surveillance. "I had access to knowledge that exists in quantum information fields. I could sense the emotional states of people hundreds of miles away, but I was losing my ability to experience simple human pleasures like the taste of food or the warmth of sunlight." The trade-offs that Dr. Rossi described represent a fundamental challenge that the Vatican faces as dimensional convergence approaches. The consciousness scaffolding that will allow humans to survive in multidimensional reality requires sacrificing many of the qualities that make human existence meaningful, according to current understanding. Scaffolded individuals gain cosmic awareness, but lose emotional spontaneity. They develop telepathic capabilities, but lose the capacity for intimate personal relationships. They transcend physical limitations, but sacrifice the sensory experiences that ground human consciousness in recognizable reality. The Vatican's response to these trade-offs has been to develop what they call hybrid protocols that attempt to preserve essential human characteristics while still providing the consciousness expansion necessary for dimensional survival. These protocols involve partial scaffolding that enhances perception and telepathic abilities without completely severing connection to normal human emotional experience. Father Diego Martinez, who leads the Vatican's hybrid protocol research, described the delicate balance required to maintain human characteristics while developing multidimensional consciousness capabilities. "We're trying to create individuals who can serve as bridges between normal human awareness and expanded cosmic consciousness," he explained during our meeting in his laboratory beneath Vatican City. "They need enough enhancement to survive dimensional convergence, but enough human emotional capacity to maintain connection with unprepared population." The bridge individuals that Father Martinez described represent humanity's best hope for maintaining species continuity in a form that preserves essential human qualities. They will serve as translators between normal human consciousness and the interdimensional entities that will establish direct contact during convergence. They will provide emotional anchoring for individuals who undergo sudden consciousness expansion. Most importantly, they will maintain cultural and genetic preservation programs that ensure human knowledge and biological diversity survive the transition to multidimensional existence. But developing successful hybrid protocols requires precise calibration of consciousness expansion that pushes Vatican technology to its absolute limits. The heritage systems must create enhancement fields that strengthen specific consciousness capabilities while leaving others untouched. The process requires individual customization based on detailed psychological profiles that take decades to develop. Most challenging of all It demands perfect timing that coordinates consciousness expansion with the cosmic conditions that will enable dimensional convergence. The timing calculations that guide Vatican preparations are based on astronomical data that has been collected continuously for over 8 centuries. The Church's instruments monitor cosmic conditions with precision that exceeds anything available to mainstream science, tracking subtle changes in dimensional barrier stability that indicate how rapidly convergence is approaching. Dr. Elena Varga, the Vatican's senior astronomer who oversees convergence timing calculations, provided insights that reveal how close humanity is to the transformation that will determine our species' fate. The electromagnetic anomalies that our instruments detect are following exponential growth patterns, she told us during our meeting at the Vatican Observatory. Based on current progression rates, we estimate that dimensional barriers will reach critical instability within the next 18 to 24 months. The time frame that Dr. Varga described means that the Vatican's preparation protocols must reach completion within months rather than years. Consciousness scaffolding programs are being accelerated. Heritage system activation is being finalized. Most significantly, the Church is implementing what they call population sorting protocols that will determine which individuals receive consciousness enhancement and which will face dimensional convergence without preparation. The sorting process operates through systems that most people never realize exist. Educational institutions that the Vatican influences conduct psychological evaluations disguised as aptitude tests. Medical facilities with church connections perform genetic screening that identifies individuals with natural telepathic sensitivity. Religious organizations worldwide report directly to Rome regarding members who demonstrate unusual consciousness capabilities. Those who meet Vatican criteria for consciousness enhancement receive invitations to participate in programs presented as academic research, spiritual retreats, or professional development opportunities. They undergo gradual preparation that slowly expands their awareness, while maintaining plausible explanations for the unusual experiences they encounter. Only after months or years of conditioning do they learn the true purpose of their training and the cosmic transformation they're being prepared to survive. The individuals who don't meet enhancement criteria remain completely unaware that sorting has occurred. They continue their normal lives while Vatican systems monitor global population for signs that dimensional convergence is approaching. When the barriers between realities finally dissolve completely, these unprepared individuals will face multidimensional existence without any cognitive framework for understanding what's happening to them. The Vatican's projections indicate that roughly 87% of humanity falls into the unprepared category. These people will experience dimensional convergence as complete reality breakdown, finding themselves in a universe that no longer operates according to the physical laws that define their entire understanding of existence. Some will adapt spontaneously, developing consciousness expansion through pure necessity. Others will experience permanent psychological fragmentation that leaves them unable to function in any reality layer. Cardinal Alessandro Farnese, who chairs the Vatican's Convergence Planning Committee, described the moral weight of decisions that will determine which humans receive preparation for species transformation and which will face the transition without assistance. "We cannot save everyone," he stated during our interview in his Vatican office. "Our responsibility is to ensure that enough prepared individuals survive to maintain human continuity in expanded dimensional existence. The mathematics are unforgiving. Resources are limited. We must choose who receives consciousness enhancement based on criteria that maximize species survival probability." The criteria that Cardinal Farnese referenced extend beyond simple psychological flexibility or intellectual capability. The Vatican's selection process prioritizes individuals who demonstrate genetic markers associated with natural telepathic ability, psychological profiles indicating resistance to consciousness fragmentation, and most importantly, cultural backgrounds that provide frameworks for understanding reality as fundamentally malleable rather than fixed. This genetic and cultural screening has created a selection bias that favors certain populations while excluding others based on factors that individuals have no control over. The ethical implications are staggering, yet Vatican planners argue that species survival during dimensional convergence requires decisions based on practical effectiveness rather than moral idealism. The approaching convergence will test not just humanity's consciousness expansion capabilities, but also our ethical frameworks for making decisions about who deserves survival when resources are insufficient to save everyone. The Vatican has made their choices based on 8 centuries of preparation and mathematical models that prioritize species continuity over individual equity. Whether those choices prove correct will be determined when dimensional barriers collapse completely and humanity faces the transformation that will either elevate us beyond current limitations or destroy us as a recognizable species. The final phase of Vatican preparations is already underway, hidden in chambers that exist deeper beneath Rome than most people could imagine. Ancient technologies are reaching full activation. Consciousness scaffolding protocols are being implemented at maximum sustainable rates. And somewhere in the quantum consciousness fields that surround our reality, interdimensional entities are coordinating their own final preparations for direct contact with the human representatives who have been selected to serve as bridges between worlds that operate according to completely different principles of existence. The convergence is no longer approaching. It has begun. In the deepest archives of Vatican City, behind walls that have never been photographed, and in chambers that exist on no architectural plans, evidence is mounting that the convergence Dr. Varga described isn't just beginning, it's accelerating beyond all mathematical projections. The electromagnetic signatures that Vatican instruments detect are no longer following predictable patterns. They're responding to human consciousness in ways that suggest something vast and intelligent has begun actively monitoring our preparation efforts. Father Thomas Kellerman, who monitors what Vatican researchers call response protocols, described phenomena that challenge every assumption about the passive nature of dimensional barriers. The anomalies aren't just random cosmic events anymore, he explained during our clandestine meeting in the Vatican's restricted botanical gardens. They're exhibiting behavior patterns that suggest deliberate intelligence. When our scaffolded individuals undergo consciousness expansion sessions, the electromagnetic readings spike in coordinated sequences. Something out there is watching our progress and reacting to it in real time. The intelligence that Father Kellerman described appears to be evaluating humanity's readiness for dimensional integration using criteria that the Vatican's researchers are only beginning to understand. The response patterns intensify when scaffolded individuals achieve specific consciousness milestones, as if unseen observers are confirming that humans can successfully develop the capabilities necessary for interdimensional communication. But the responses also include what can only be described as corrections, subtle adjustments to the expansion process that suggest the monitoring intelligence possesses far more sophisticated understanding of consciousness mechanics than Vatican researchers have achieved. Dr. Catherine Walsh, a consciousness researcher who works directly with the Vatican's most advanced scaffolding subjects, documented interactions that blur the line between scientific observation and active collaboration with interdimensional entities. During deep expansion sessions, our subjects report receiving information that they couldn't possibly know, she told us, through encrypted communication from an undisclosed location. mathematical concepts that solve problems our research teams have struggled with for years, technical specifications for improving heritage system efficiency. Most unsettling of all, detailed knowledge about dimensional physics that we haven't discovered yet, but can verify through experimental testing. The information transfer that Dr. Walsh described operates through mechanisms that conventional neuroscience cannot explain. Scaffolded individuals don't learn new concepts through normal cognitive processes. Instead, they experience what they describe as direct knowledge insertion, where complex understanding appears fully formed in their consciousness, without any learning period or gradual comprehension development. The knowledge arrives with complete technical precision, including mathematical proofs and experimental methodologies that demonstrate levels of scientific sophistication far beyond current human capabilities. Vatican researchers initially assumed this knowledge transfer represented access to quantum information fields that exist independently of individual consciousness. But mounting evidence suggests something far more directed and purposeful. The information that scaffolded subjects receive appears to be carefully selected and precisely timed to accelerate Vatican preparation efforts. Technical improvements arrive exactly when needed to overcome specific research obstacles. Theoretical breakthroughs emerge at moments when they can be immediately applied to practical problems. The coordination implied by this pattern of knowledge transfer indicates that humanity's preparation for dimensional convergence is being actively guided by intelligence that understands the process far better than Vatican researchers ever could. The entities that monitor our progress aren't passive observers waiting for humans to develop necessary capabilities independently. They're actively participating in our consciousness expansion, providing exactly the information needed to ensure successful transition while maintaining the illusion that human researchers are making independent discoveries. Sister Maria Gonzalez, who serves as psychological counselor for scaffolded individuals experiencing advanced consciousness expansion, described the emotional impact of realizing that human preparation efforts are being externally guided. Our most advanced subjects understand that their enhanced capabilities aren't really their own achievements, she explained during our conversation in a small chapel hidden within Vatican City's administrative complex. They're experiencing controlled consciousness evolution designed by intelligence that operates according to principles they can sense, but never fully comprehend. The psychological effect is profound humility mixed with existential terror. The terror that Sister Gonzalez referenced stems from implications that scaffolded individuals can perceive but cannot clearly articulate. The guided nature of human consciousness expansion suggests that dimensional convergence isn't a natural cosmic event that humanity must adapt to survive. It's a controlled transformation being implemented by entities whose motives and ultimate objectives remain completely opaque to human understanding. The scaffolded subjects who have achieved the deepest levels of consciousness expansion report sensing vast intelligence networks that span multiple dimensional layers, communication systems that operate across galactic distances, and coordination protocols that suggest dimensional convergence is occurring simultaneously throughout numerous star systems. Humanity isn't undergoing unique transformation. We're being integrated into a process that affects intelligent life throughout the cosmos, according to schedules and criteria that transcend individual planetary civilizations. Dr. Marcus Hoffman, a theoretical physicist who analyzes the mathematical implications of information received during scaffolding sessions, described cosmic-scale coordination that makes human civilization appear insignificant within larger patterns of universal development. The data suggests that consciousness evolution occurs in synchronized waves across multiple galaxies, he told us during our meeting, at a secure facility outside Rome. Species that reach certain development thresholds are simultaneously prepared for dimensional integration, regardless of their physical location or cultural characteristics. Earth appears to be one of thousands of worlds undergoing convergence during this particular cosmic cycle. The cosmic perspective that Dr. Hoffman outlined transforms the Vatican's preparation efforts from unique human achievement into participation in universal processes that dwarf individual planetary significance. The consciousness expansion technologies, the heritage systems, the scaffolding protocols, they're all components of a standardized transformation process that has been implemented across countless worlds by entities whose existence spans dimensional layers and galactic regions. The convergence is no longer a distant possibility hidden in ancient texts or Vatican archives. It's happening now, accelerating beyond every mathematical model, guided by intelligence that views our entire civilization as a single data point in a cosmic transformation spanning galaxies. The electromagnetic anomalies grow stronger each day. The heritage systems beneath Vatican City pulse with increasing frequency. And somewhere in the quantum consciousness fields that surround our reality, entities that have orchestrated this process across countless worlds are making final preparations for humanity's integration into something far greater and more terrifying than we ever imagined.